Hello everyone, this is Mikey Garcia.
Yo, it's your boy, the odd guy himself, Malik King Scott.
Hi, I'm Charlie Edwards.
This is Fast Eddie Chambers, and you're listening to the Boxhard podcast with my main man, Joey Coastman.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 15 of the Boxhard podcast. We're back after the 2 or 3 week little layoff over the Christmas and New Year period. We're back with another show. We're pleased to be back. I'm your host, as always, Joey Coastman, and I'm joined, as always, by Ayaz Sumra. Ayaz, how you doing?
I'm good, Joey. How are you?
Very good, very good. Now, there isn't much to review. There was a couple of fights that took place last weekend. A lot of them were sort of late notice fights. I'm going to read out a few of the results in a minute. I just wanted to say that this is the 15th episode. In the first 14 episodes, we've brought you 21 guests. We've also got another relevant guest this show. We will be speaking later to Mark De Mori. I'm just going to spend a little bit of time reviewing the clashes that took place this week, of course, and then we're going to move into the second part of the show where we preview the big fights that are coming up this weekend. So there was a little card in Germany that was on the Saturday, a little card over there, which included, of course, Vincent Fagenbutz. He lost by an 11th round TKO to Giovanni Di Carolis. Now, I think that Fagenbutz was supposed to win this fight. This was for the WBA World Super Middleweight title. So Fagenbutz has been upset over there. Also, another little card in Germany, Robin Krasnicki. He picked up his 45th professional win. He now is 45 wins, 4 losses. He beat a guy called Kagri Ermis. Again, it was only an 8-rounder. Not much to say about that opponent. Also on that bill, on the other Germany bill, this was in Offenburg. This was on the undercard of Fagenbutz. A little late replacement, Derek Chisora. He got out in what was his 30th professional fight. He now moves to 25-5. He picked up a TKO in the second round. Now, Chisora, he's had 5 fights, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, 5 fights since the loss to Tyson Fury back in late 2014. So he's basically had 5 fights in 1 year. All but one of those 5 fights has ended in knockout. A knockout in the first round, 5th round, 3rd round, and 2nd round now. And of course, he got taken to points by the crafty veteran Marcelo Luis Nascimento. So this is what Derek Chisora seems to do. He'll lose a fight at the top level and he'll drop down a level and he'll pick up all these knockout victories and he will be looking to get in there again in some sort of title shot in the near future. Again, of course, he's just recently teamed up with Team Sauerland, and Sauerland also own David Price. So there could be a little clash that I'd like to see. I'd really love to see that fight. I think I've expressed that before on the podcast. I don't really think there's anything else to mention from this week, apart from a little card in Spain. Evgeny Gradovic picked up a win over Jesus Galicia. Gradovic now 21-1 with the 1 draw. Of course, on the last show, we spoke to Lee Selby, who took his world title off of him. And as that was a really small review part of the show, it's a really, really small one. We're going to move straight on to the preview side of things. We're going to jump straight in. Usually we bring you the review part, then we bring on a guest, then we bring you the preview part, and then we bring you another guest. This week, we're just going to go straight into the review part because it was such a short... Sorry, we're going to go straight into the preview part because the review part was very, very short. I'm going to start with the card, of course, in Brooklyn. I'm not going to start over here. I'm going to leave that to Sophia Di Stefano, who's going to be joining us a little bit later. I'm going to move straight into the card in Brooklyn. Deontay Wilder tops the bill. He defends his WBC World Heavyweight title against Artur Szpilka. Ayaz, what's your thoughts on this fight? Artur Szpilka, 20 wins, of course, the 1 loss. And that 1 loss was by a KO to Bryant Jennings back in 2014. It was in the final round, but to be honest, he was basically losing every round of that fight. To be honest, so what is your thoughts on this fight? Do you think Artur Szpilka can pose any threats to Deontay Wilder?
I reckon this is a very good fight with Artur Szpilka and Deontay Wilder. In my opinion, if I have to say who wins this fight, I'm going to go with Deontay Wilder. And you know
Yeah.
why? Because I reckon Wilder knocks him out. There's another thing as well. They were saying that Tyson Fury might be ringside for the fight to see, because there's a future. I can see this fight happening, Wilder versus Fury in the future.
Yeah, that's right. I have actually got wind of Tyson Fury being in the Big Apple in New York. A lot of fighters are going to this fight. I think Malik Scott's going to be there. I think Eddie Chambers is also going to be there. A lot of fighters are getting down to this. Of course, Deontay Wilder 35-0 with the 34 knockouts. If Bryant Jennings can put Artur Spilker away, and Bryant Jennings is not a big puncher, let's face it, then I'm sure that Wilder carries enough power to do the same. But again, you can't just base it on that. But I just think Spilker's actually a good fighter, and I think this is a tough test for Deontay Wilder. Spilker also can bang himself. He's got 20 wins, 15 of those 20 by knockout. He's ranked 19th in the world via Boxrec, but he's a credible little fighter. Again, from Poland, but he is kind of considered a small heavyweight. He's only 6'3". But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what that fight brings. But yeah, prediction-wise, got to go with Deontay Wilder to pick up his 36th win. It's probably going to be by knockout as well. Moving down that card, the other heavyweight title clash. This card has 2 heavyweight titles on the line. The second clash, Charles Martin fights Vladislav Glaskov. This is for the vacant IBF World Heavyweight title. This is the one that the IBF stripped Tyson Fury of. So they fight for the vacant title. Charles Martin, we had him on the show a couple of weeks back, 22-0 with the 1 draw. Also in those 22 wins, 20 by knockout. And Glaskov, 21-0 with the 1 draw. That 1 draw was against Malik Scott. He's been very lucky, Glaskov, to keep a record with no losses, and he's managed to get through all 22 fights without picking up a loss. He's been pretty lucky when it comes down to the judges' scorecards. But how do you see that fight going? I don't suppose you've seen too much of Glaskov, Ayaz, but how do you see that fight going? Who have you got, Charles Martin or Glaskov?
I got Charles Martin to win on points, I reckon.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I don't know much about Glaskov's chin. I know that, he's been in there with Malik Scott. I know that Malik Scott isn't very much of a big puncher. He didn't really trouble him with his power or anything like that, despite hitting him flush. He also fought, of course, Steve Cunningham. Steve Cunningham, again, not a big puncher. We saw him fight Thomas Adamek. Thomas Adamek didn't really land him in any trouble. And again, not a very big puncher at heavyweight. He sort of hasn't really been in there with any big punchers, so I can't really tell you what his chin's like. But he will be tested here. His chin will really be tested for the first time in his career, probably, because we all know that Charles Martin can bang. Moving down that card, there's not really much else on there. Makej Suleki's on the bill. He looks to move to 22-0. He fights Derek Finley, 22 wins, 17 losses and 1 draw. It's a bit of a showcase fight, that. Mike Lee's also on the bill. He's 15-0 at the moment. He looks to move to 16-0. There's a couple of unbeaten prospects on the bill. I think there's 2 or 3 other unbeaten prospects. Also, we're going to now move over to the Bomb Factory in Dallas, Texas. Matt Korobov tops the bill. This is his first fight back after losing to Andy Lee, which was just over a year ago. I think it's about 13 months today almost. He lost to Andy Lee via 6th round TKO, and Andy Lee became the new WBO world middleweight title holder. And of course, he lost that belt recently to Billy Joe Saunders. So Andy Lee's old foe, Matt Korobov, he fights a guy called Jose Ovando. Matt Korobov, of course, 24 wins and the 1 loss, that 1 loss to Andy Lee. And Jose Ovando, I think they're sort of, they're taking it easy with Korobov. Ovando's record, 14 wins and 8 losses with the 1 draw. Matt Korobov was a good fighter, wasn't he? As he actually, technically a sound fighter. He just come unstuck against Andy Lee. We've seen Andy Lee, 1 punch can change any of his fights.
I reckon in this fight, I see Korobov winning. In my opinion, I'll probably see him knocking his opponent out. In my opinion, I reckon he's very good as well.
Yeah, he is. He is. He's a very, like I say, he's a very technically sound fighter. Eric De Leon is also on the bill. He looks to move to 12-0. John Vera looks to move to 12-0. Johnny Detterman looks to move to 11-0. See, this week, all these fighters would have been training over Christmas. There's not much going on these cards. It's just full up with prospects in 6-rounders and 8-rounders trying to, pad their record out a little bit. So that's really it for part one. We've done the review and we've done the preview. We're now going to bring on our first guest. Ayaz is going to leave us, and after we speak to Mark De Mori, we're going to be back talking about the Haye fight. Well, I'm going to be back talking about the Haye fight with Sophia Di Stefano. So we'll see you in part 2. Ayaz, see you later, my friend, and we're going to welcome Mr. Mark De Mori. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome, with a record of 30 wins, 1 loss and 2 draws, 26 of those 30 wins coming by way of knockout, David Haye's opponent for January the 16th, Mr. Mark De Mori. Mark, welcome to the show, sir.
Thanks for having me on.
No problem. No problem. Now, I wanted to just start with something that has nothing to do with the Haye fight. The first question I wanted to ask you was, you signed with Don King for a while. Who are you signed with now, promotionally, Mark?
My promoter is Warriors Boxing. That's an American company, and my manager is Mike Barreo. Warriors Boxing, they've got lots of good Polish fighters. Artur Szpilka, who will fight Deontay Wilder soon, and the WBO cruiserweight champion. They've got a really good stable right now. So if I wasn't fighting David Haye, I would have been heading over to America for fights again.
Okay. And what do you make of your time with Don King? Are you happy that you went down that route with him originally?
Yeah, because when I got the opportunity to sign with King, I was really headed nowhere in the world of boxing, and I was stuck in Australia where it's very small money, very small opportunity. So I really was just so happy that he would give me an opportunity, and I had 2 fights over in America with him and lived in his training camp for a few months. And so, I mean, for me, it was a fantastic way to get out of the Australian boxing circuit and get overseas and meet different people and get some exposure.
Okay, and a fellow countryman is making a lot of noise, a fellow countryman of yourself, Mr. Lucas Brown. What do you make of Lucas, Mark? What do you make of his career so far and him as a fighter?
Yeah, we used to spar a long time ago when he was just starting out. And then I moved away, and I think he went to Sydney. But he's done a great job, and his management have been really intelligent the way they've won some regional titles and positioned him perfectly to fight with Chagayev, who is a very tough competitor, but I think is quite a small heavyweight that might have, peaked a few years ago. So I think he's a really good chance in that fight.
Another fight that I wanted to ask you about, a potential fight. Who do you think would win if there was a unification bout between Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder?
Well, it is hard to say, because even though Tyson Fury beat Klitschko, I think it was like 11 rounds of nobody throwing a punch for me. Whereas Deontay Wilder, he has his flaws, but he loves to fight. So, right now I would put my money on Wilder, but look, Wilder hasn't beaten the caliber Fury has. Fury has that win over Klitschko, which means a lot more than Wilder's wins. For me, though, I think Wilder's incredibly underrated. And I think people have given him a lot of stick for fighting some weaker opposition early in his career. But his fight with Eric Molina, he didn't look too good. But his last fight, I thought he looked like he improved a lot. And I was ringside when he fought Bermain Stavern, and he looked great. So I think most people would favour Fury, but I'd pick the upset and go with Wilder.
We actually had Eric Molina on the show just before Christmas, and he had a lot to say about that fight.
I met Eric Molina because we were maybe going to fight on that undercard to Stavern Wilder, but I didn't get my visa in time. But I met him in the gym. He's a very friendly guy, and I think he's got a punch that could knock out a horse, so he's dangerous against anyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, something that I read this week that caught my eye, I couldn't really believe what I was reading. I just wanted to get your reasons behind it. It came out recently that you said that this could potentially be your last fight. Could you shed some light on that?
Yeah, well, look, boxing, I've been in boxing a long time. And originally I only started in boxing because I really enjoyed it. But to be honest, the last few years, I've only stuck at it just trying to get that big opportunity. I haven't, stuck at it because I'm enjoying it. I've started to hate the gym, and I've started to hate the training. And this David Haye fight's given me a bit of motivation again. But, you can't get punched in the head forever. And if you've ever met an old fighter who's punch drunk, or if you've ever seen a fight live where the guy goes into a coma, it gives you a pretty good reminder of what a stupid way to live your life this is, because eventually it's like Russian roulette. Eventually you'll take one punch too many. So my goals are to prove a point that I could achieve something and I could fight and put a certain amount of money in the bank. And this Haye fight's going to do that very well for me. And I've got a lot of respect for Haye. He's been a great champion, but a win over Haye would really cement me as one of the... if there's a bigger win in Australian heavyweight history, I don't know about it. I'm not a historian, so someone would have to correct me.
Is that only if you beat Haye, or is that if you lose or draw to Haye?
It just depends how I feel after the fight. Like I've struggled for the last few fights to find the motivation. Physically, I've done all the work, but mentally, I'm sort of walking to the ring a little bit bored and unenthusiastic. I mean, this one's going to be a different atmosphere, so I'm sure I'll get much more involved. But you know, it's a dangerous sport, and yes, it's a way to make a living. But at some point, you got to reevaluate whether it's a smart thing to keep walking into the ring purely for money and because people tell you should. You know, there's got to be a burning desire to be at the top level in this sport. Otherwise, I think you're asking for trouble when you're going in there a little bit bored. And sometimes in fights, I'm sort of not being the best I can be with my defense. I'm a little bit of cruise control, and I think it's a very bad habit to get into. So, I've got a really good life outside of boxing. I live in Croatia with my wife, and we have a really good lifestyle. And it'd be silly of me just to keep pushing in boxing for no reason and take unnecessary punishment.
But looking into the fact that a lot of people, and it's just purely because they wasn't too sure about who you were and who you'd been in with and that type of stuff. A lot of people, when David Haye announced his fight, were a bit like, oh, why didn't he jump in there with a Klitschko or someone right, at the top of the tree straight away? A lot of people were sort of like, oh, God, just another fight like this. And for you to come out and say that this could potentially be your last fight, some people may look at that as if your motivation's dying and David Haye's picked the perfect opponent. But could you assure everybody that you have really trained as hard as we know you've actually trained, for some of the people that don't pay enough attention to what you do day in, day out?
Yeah, of course. I mean, even the recent fights I've had, which were for very small money, I trained my ass off. I'm just saying that that when you're young, you might love a sport, you might have a passion for it, but as you get older, it becomes more about business. And when I got this offer to fight David Haye, I wouldn't take it unless I thought I could win. And at the press conference, I was pretty clear that that's what I'm here to do. But people, let's say the casual fan in the UK, they know Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, David Haye, and anyone else they're not going to be happy with. Maybe they also know Klitschko. So David Haye has no world ranking. He hasn't fought for 3.5 years. So anyone that thinks he's going to jump straight in with Joshua or Klitschko is obviously doesn't know the business. So David Haye's picked me because of a good record and a good world ranking, and I'm not going to give that up easily. I've got much better ways to make money than getting punched in the head. So for me, the reason I took this fight over the other fights in America is because the size of the show was something that would motivate me. I really couldn't get interested in any more small fights.
Okay, and of course he hasn't been in the ring for 3.5 years now. Is there any chance? Do you feel that he's taken you lightly at all?
Yeah, definitely he has, but it's up to me to prove him wrong. If he's taken me lightly, that's an advantage for me, because this is the biggest fight of my life, and I've prepared very well. And I don't enjoy being in London and being in this cold place and training here. And I'd much rather be back in Croatia relaxing. So I'm sacrificing to be over here to try and get that win. I could be just relaxing and enjoying, but instead I'm over here doing the hard work. So he's taken it lightly. I'm sure he's looking past me to the huge paydays against Joshua or Fury or whoever he's planning on fighting. But I hit extremely hard, and I can very quickly derail his plans if he's not focused.
And I just wanted to touch on being over here. How well received do you feel you've been by the English public? Because they've really taken a like to you by the looks of Twitter.
I don't know. I seem to get some people supporting me. They're not fans of David Haye, so I think they're only supporting me because they want to see Haye lose. And some people have, been abusive all over social media, which is fair enough because I was on there criticising Brits and things like that just to get a few people angry. Just it's all part of the show. But no, look, most of the people I've met have been very polite and supportive. So it's quite cool, because when I first came, we did the press conference, and within a few hours of all the media putting their stories up, I was in the street and people knew who I was. So it was quite a funny experience.
And I just wanted to also say, what do you feel David Haye's strengths are? What particular assets do you feel that you have that are superior to his assets?
Well, he's very agile, and he's very explosive, and he likes to set traps. And what I mean by that is he's not going to run at you. He's not going to go kamikaze, but he'll wait for you. He tries to set traps, make you walk into them, then make you pay. But when I have to be, I'm a very intelligent boxer. A lot of fights I'm really quite bored. I'm just looking for the knockout because I'm not motivated. But when I'm boxing, for example, with my trainer, who was a two-time Olympian, ranked number 2 in the world at light heavyweight, it's almost like a game of chess, and you're always trying to set up the trap and catch the other guy. And I know David Haye's style. I know what he's done, and I've studied him well. And while he's very explosive, I think I have more power and more strength. So that's going to be a big difference when we get in close. And he's looking to dance around and look for that one perfect shot. If I can get in there and rough him up, I think my extra weight and physical strength is going to cause him problems inside.
Also, how deeply have you studied him? Because I saw in another video that you brought up David Haye's fight against Lalenga Mock, and that was a fight very early on in his career. And to be honest, a lot of people have forgotten about that. Only really the die-hard boxing fans remember fights like that. How deep have you studied him, Mark?
I've watched nearly every fight he's had. I've studied interviews with him, listened to Adam Booth speak about him, and I've even spoken with some guys that have sparred with him, and they've told me about him. They've all said the same thing, which is he hits very hard, he's very explosive, but if you can rough him up, he doesn't enjoy it. So, I know exactly, even if his new trainer has tried to change his style or something, I mean, he's going to be pretty much the same guy, a very explosive, very agile heavyweight. So if a guy like Lalenga Mock can throw a wild overhand right and drop him, I know I can, because Lalenga Mock really is a light heavyweight. And he was a good, solid journeyman, but he wasn't known for his huge knockout power, and he was only a light heavyweight. So simple science says if he can drop him, I can definitely drop him.
Of course, that was a long time ago, but yeah, I know what you're saying. You definitely, a
Sure,
bigger
but you might say it was a long time ago, but his best performances were also, quite a few years ago. So
fair point.
There's different ways to look at it. You can also say Jean-Marc Mormec dropped him. A lot of guys have dropped him. I think Monty Barrett dropped him, and these are all good fighters, but there's no reason why I can't drop him when I catch him. I'm very explosive. I set traps as well. I'll always put my head in there, looking like it's there to be hit, and then look for a power shot to counter. So there's no bravado or arrogance here of me saying I'm going to beat him, but there is a lot of me that feels that if he overlooks me or if he tries to get fancy against me, I'm pretty confident of landing a knockout punch.
And also, of course, David has had a serious operation on his shoulder. Doctors advised him never to box again. Will you be looking for that shoulder? Will you be looking to smash his shoulder in?
If I'm having any trouble hitting him cleanly with the left hook to the head, if he's blocking it well, maybe I will just target his shoulder. I have done that before in fights when guys have got a good reach advantage on me. I will just look to target their lead shoulder, but with David Haye, it's his right shoulder. So a big left hook smashing onto the shoulder. Who knows? Maybe it'll do nothing. Maybe it'll rattle the pins and it'll take away his right hand. But certainly there's no way I would ignore it. If I saw him hurt or if I saw him injured, I would be more than happy to exploit that weakness.
Okay, now the last two questions I've got for you. Firstly, could I ask you your favourite UK fighter of all time? I sort of ask this question to everybody we speak to from overseas. Any weight.
I was a big fan of Prince Nassim Hamed when I was
younger.
Everyone
says that.
Yeah, he was very exciting, and I thought he was quite good with the press because even when he made fun of his opponents, He always seemed to have a little bit of cheekiness about him. Like, I don't think he meant anything bad by it, but he knew how to get people really angry and sell tickets. And I think he was an amazing entertainer.
And finally now, your prediction, if you can give it to us, for the big clash on the 16th.
I think inside 4 rounds, one of us will be knocked unconscious. And I'm going to take a risky fight plan trying to force that, because I'm not the kind of guy that will win on points or wants to win on points. To me, that's boring. So we're definitely looking for a fast start, an explosive start, and anything can happen.
Excellent. Excellent. We look forward to seeing that. Thank you very much for coming on the show, Mark. Thank you very much for taking a bit of time, and I wish you all the best of luck in your fight with David.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, now we're going to get into the part of the show where we talk about the David Haye fight, his return fight at the O2 Arena this Saturday, the 16th. He faces off against Mark De Mori. Now, David Haye, his record at the moment, 28 fights, 26 wins, 24 by a knockout and 2 losses. Those 2 losses, of course, Carl Thompson and Vladimir Klitschko. And Mark De Mori with a record of 30 wins, 1 loss, 26 of those 30 wins coming by way of knockout. I've got Sophia on the call now. So welcome to the show, Sophia.
Hi, Joey. How you doing?
Very good, very good. Yeah, so talk to me about this fight, because I know that these are the types of fights that, you know, get you very interested into boxing. So tell me a bit about this fight, Sophia.
Well, obviously, everyone knows that David Haye is coming off the back of a 3.5-year layoff outside of the ring. And he's fighting, as you said, Mark De Mori, which, you know, Mark De Mori is not an easy opponent necessarily to come back to your first big comeback fight. As you said, he's ranked in the top 10. He's been out the ring for... Well, David's obviously been out the ring, but Mark De Mori has not been beaten in over 11 years, and unbeaten in 26 fights. So, you know, it's a decent opponent for him to come back to. I do believe David will come through it quite comfortably, purely on the fact that I think Mark De Mori hasn't really fought anyone of any notoriety. But it'll be interesting to see the stamina. I think stamina will play a part between both of them, because Mark De Mori's not been past 4 rounds in 2 years, which is obviously a good thing, but also the likes of David Haye will potentially, if it is going to go past, you know, if it's not going to be an emphatic knockout early doors, it could go on to the later rounds. So it'll be interesting to see. I think stamina will play a part. It'll be interesting to see how much of a key factor that is.
Of course, David Haye, you know, as you mentioned, 3.5 years out. Do you think ring rust could play a factor in this fight at all?
I think, yes, of course. I'd be silly to say it wouldn't play a part, and it wouldn't be a factor for David Haye. But I do know that he's meticulously trained for 4 months. He is completely injury-free, which is a first for him in a training camp. He's obviously with his new trainer, Shane McGuigan. I think they're going to be a formidable force together. David's fighting at a much heavier weight, but his speed still seems to be the same, which is obviously the key part to his sort of armour. So I personally see an early knockout for David Haye, so I don't see ring rust playing too much of a part, unless obviously it goes on to the much later round.
So there's no way you think that this could go to points?
No, I don't see that personally. I see it ending in a knockout, and I see David Haye being victorious.
Yeah, because the combined knockout number between these two guys, 50 knockouts in, I think, about 60 contests. I think I've got that right.
Oh,
Mark
yeah,
De Mori
it's an incredible knockout ratio between the two of them, as you said, but you have to look at the opponents that both of them have faced. And obviously, David Haye has faced world-class opponents, and I can't really see world-class opponents on Mark De Mori's record.
Absolutely. I just think if David Haye is facing only Mark De Mori, he could probably get this win. If he's facing Mark De Mori plus some ring rust, it could be interesting. It will be really good. Again, that's going to be on Dave, of course. Anybody that's got a Freeview box can watch that fight. Of course, there's some tickets still left at the O2 Arena.
Yeah, it's going to be a super exciting night, and I'm actually working on the night. I'm doing all the ringside interviews, and from what I'm hearing, the guys behind the show and behind David, the Salter brothers. They're wanting to make it very much an entertainment show, just not like a generic boxing show. So I think it's going to be a very exciting night. You're going to see a very different type of show, not what you're kind of used to on TV. And I'm hearing some quite big names and big music acts. So I think it's going to be a very exciting night, but that's for sure.
It should be. It should be. I'm not sure what happened because Billy Dibb was supposed to be on the card. I know that he pulled out about a week ago or 2 weeks ago. He's now not on the card. His fight was
chief support.
Yeah, I want to just
cancelled as well.
I just want to touch on that. Yeah, to be told, it was Shane Singleton, wasn't it?
Yeah, Shane Singleton and O'Donnell.
Yeah, that one's been called off with about 3 days to go. I think the whole card now consists of only 6 fights. I'm just going to mention those fights for anybody that's listening. Tony Dodson, he steps in against Richard Horton. Kay Prosper's also on the bill. Jose Lopez. Wadi Camacho gets out again. He looks to pick up his 14th professional win, and Josh Kennedy's also on the bill. So a couple of prospects. But all in all, good luck to Dave for putting on their first ever live sporting event, and congratulations for being a part of that, Sophia.
No, thank you. No, it's very exciting, and fingers crossed there'll be many more shows on Dave TV, because I think they're looking to put a lot more sporting events, and I think this is their first boxing show, but I think they'll do a good job of it by the sounds of it. So fingers crossed all goes well on the night.
Excellent. So your prediction for that fight is a early stoppage win for David Haye?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, and one other thing I wanted to ask you, this is purely, like for the future, providing David Haye gets through Mark De Mori.
Yeah.
Right now, tomorrow, if David Haye, well, obviously not tomorrow because he's fighting Mark De Mori, but, technically speaking, David Haye to face off against Anthony Joshua now.
I knew you were going to put me on the line, Joey. I knew it.
Well, whose corner are you in?
That's a really tough call. Are you saying, I think that's a little unfair to call David Haye to fight Anthony Joshua when he's had a 3.5-year layout. Yeah. I think if you're going to ask me a little bit more of a fairer question and say, give David Haye 3 fights.
No.
No.
I think now.
It's such a tough call, because I think I'm such a big fan of David Haye. I think he's been one of the most exciting heavyweights and cruiserweights we've ever had in this country.
Listen,
and I'm really excited as a boxing fan to have him back. I do, and I'm a big fan of Anthony Joshua. I think he's going to go all the way, and he will become world champion.
Yeah, exactly the same for me. But I honestly think
a little bit. I think
let me just say,
got shown up a little bit in his last fight.
Right, let me just say, I am a huge fan of Haye and a huge fan of Joshua, but I honestly think if we, it's a strange one, because right now Joshua has been active. He's getting better and better. David Haye has had the layoff, but strangely, I'm going to ask you this question. This is a serious question. This is quite a hard question. Who benefits
You've already asked me
more?
a hard question before.
Yeah, no, I'm going to go back to that. Who benefits more in this? David Haye to have 3 fights, then fight Joshua, or Joshua to have 3 fights, then fight Haye? Because
David
remember,
Haye, definitely.
You think?
Definitely. Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Because
Once David Haye has 3 fights currently, though, he'll be a different fighter.
Do you think Joshua is ready for Haye right now? Because I don't think he is.
I don't think he is. He is. And that's absolutely no disrespect to Anthony Joshua, because I think Anthony Joshua himself would say he's not ready for David Haye. Anthony Joshua says himself he's got so much more to learn. He's definitely on this journey. He doesn't need to be sort of thrown in the deep end. And fair play to him. He hasn't had that many professional fights. He's only been professional for 2 years. David Haye's been a professional for 20 years. He's been to the top of the game. He's been heavyweight world champion. He's unified the cruiserweight division. It's a different caliber of fighter. But, I know I've slightly sat on the fence here, but I think 2016 summer will be a fight between those two, and it will be an absolutely epic fight. And I really, really look forward to it.
So we can't squeeze a prediction, no?
Not right now. I don't think Anthony Joshua is ready for David Haye, and David Haye with a 3.5-year layout isn't ready necessarily for Anthony Joshua.
Fair enough.
But
fair enough.
If you're going to push me, if you're going to really, really push me,
yep.
I think, I don't know, maybe I'm slightly edged towards David Haye.
Okay, if anybody doesn't
Purely
like
on
that,
experience. Purely on
anybody-
experience.
if any-
Purely on the fact that he's used to fighting bigger fighters like Valuev. You know, he won the heavyweight title against Valuev. He's experienced, and I think experience takes you a long way in the boxing game.
if anybody doesn't like what Sophia had to say, you can all tweet some hate at her on Twitter.
Listen,
you can find her easily.
I'm sure many people, but you've really, really pushed me, and it's 10
No,
o'clock
of
at
course.
night, and I'm
Of
going to blame all
course.
sorts of excuses on it. But as I said, I am a huge fan of both boxers. I actually think by the time they both fight, potentially, they could both hold world titles, and it could be a unification fight, which would be fantastic for the British public. That's what I predict.
It really would be. And I think we're going to end this preview of the David Haye fight right there, and we're going to bring on our second guest on this week's show. It's my pleasure to welcome the former WBO cruiserweight champion of the world, Enzo Maccarinelli. Enzo, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem, no problem. Now, your record today, of course, 41 wins and the 7 losses, 33 of those 41 wins by knockout. You've just come off of a massive, massive win. You've defeated one of the sport's biggest legends. Of course, you know, this is a big win for you. But how did it feel to share the ring with someone who you no doubt looked up to as you were coming up?
It was, you know, I had to put it to one side. It was hard, and you know, I went to the weigh-in the day before, and I remember, we stared in each other's eyes, and as soon as we weighed in, I shook his hand, and I pulled him towards me, and I said, it's going to be an honour and a privilege to share the ring with you tomorrow, but make no mistakes about it. We've made a big mistake, and I'm coming to knock you out tomorrow night. So, you know, I put it to one side.
Absolutely. And coming into the Roy Jones fight, Roy Jones himself was coming off of an 8-fight win streak, which he hadn't done since 2003. He seemed to have found some sort of form, you know, in his previous fights until he met you. He couldn't, you know, his momentum wasn't enough to overcome what you had on the night. How was it? I mean, did he still have those qualities? Because we know that, you know, he's got this ring craft that won't leave him. However, he's not really the fighter he was before. You know, is he still credible? Sort of, you know, is he good to get under those big lights with?
Yeah, it was. Don't get me wrong. I know he's nowhere near the Roy Jones of old. You know, I said that at the press conference. I said that he said I'm just as good as I ever been. I said you're not. He said I am. I said no, you're not. I said I wouldn't be here thinking I could beat you if he was as good as he was. You know, the man was phenomenal, and he still had some moves. I was surprised how fast he was, and he could definitely crack a bit. But I think the main reason they picked me, yes, I was a name, yes, I was dangerous, but I've been a light heavyweight for the last 5 years, and I seen him at the press conference 8 weeks prior to the fight, and I was still in the process of making light heavy, so I was nice and lean, I was thin in the face. 8 weeks later, when I turned up in Russia, you know, I'm fuller, I'm up to 14 stone. I just look like a totally different person. You know, I don't think they realise how heavy-handed I am and how physically strong I am as well.
I'd like to ask you, what does 2016 hold for Enzo Mac?
I don't know, to be honest. I'd like a crack at any of the world champions. You know, where people can say what they want about me, but one thing you get with me is I come to fight. I'm not scared of anyone. I don't fear anyone. And you give me any of the champions, I will give it everything I got. So hopefully that would be the ultimate send-off for me then.
So you will be contesting the rest of your career at Cruiser, is that right?
I think so. I think I felt so strong. I felt so powerful and strong. And don't get me wrong, I used to make the light heavyweight limit quite comfortably with the diet I was on, but I think just dropping down to 12.7 obviously just took a little something out of me. You know, I had my chance at a world title at light heavy against Jürgen Bremer, and I do believe to this day if my eye hadn't gone, I would have knocked him out. And you know, I think they know that as well. That's why I never had a rematch. So yeah, I think I have to speak with Gary and Frank Warren, but no, I think I feel more comfortable at Cruiser.
Who, in your opinion, is the weakest world champion at Cruiser?
I don't know, to be honest. They've all got different sort of styles. You've got Droz, you've got Lebedev, you've got the Polish kid, and who else? Who have I missed out now? Ramirez. I'd probably say Ramirez would be the weakest out of the four, if I had to label one as the weak one.
And there's also a huge prospect coming through, Alexander Usyk. I don't know if you've seen anything of him.
Yeah, very good, very good. Southpaw slick. Watched him a few times. He's probably the more talented out of the lot of them.
Yeah, only 9 fights into his career, so really bright future for him. So, of course, you're literally 2 fights off of your 50th professional outing, so that's a little milestone for you. Do you think you will get that 50th fight this year? Do you plan to be active this year? How many times would you ideally like to fight this year, Enzo?
I'll fight as many times as my body's capable. I boxed in Russia. I boxed Roy Jones. I come home on a Sunday, and a Monday I was back in the gym. I'm doing 15 rounds a day. I'm doing 6-mile runs in 41 minutes. I got an amateur club as well, so I train with youngsters, and sometimes I actually train with them as well. So I'm physically very fit. I'm probably fitter now than when I was 25, and I'm not lying. I think I'm just a little bit wiser, and my diet's much better, and I just feel really good at this moment. But we'll have to wait and see it. But ultimately, 2016 could be my last year. I got so much going on, and like you said, I've been in this sport now, I think 16 years. And ultimately, I'd like to go out with a world title, but we'll see.
Who, in your opinion, are the top 3 cruiserweights in Britain at the moment?
It's me, Bellew, and McKenzie.
Yeah. Oval was very, very, very close to beating Ramirez. I don't know if you caught that fight. It was very close.
Yeah, I did. I didn't think he won. I'll be honest, but it was very close on 10 days' notice. It was an amazing performance. I just believe that when you go away into someone's backyard to fight the champion, I think I'm one of them who believe you've got to rip it off them. I just think he just didn't do enough. But he did come close, and with a bit more notice, you never know.
And who would you say so far in your career has been your toughest fight, Enzo?
Without a shadow of a doubt, the toughest man I ever boxed was Marcelo Dominguez, the Argentinian. I think the fight before me, he went 12-round distance, give away 7 stone to Valley Web. And he was like hitting a breeze block. And I remember in the 3rd round, I made him fall short with a jab. I hit him with the best right hand I've ever thrown in my life. He just looked at me, smiled, and said, "Good shot." I bricked it.
Very honest. Now, of course, David Haye, former foe of yourself, he's now back. What do you think he can offer the heavyweight division now, this late on in his career? I know he's not too old, but he's been out the ring for 3.5 years.
Yeah, David's a smart man. I don't think he would be coming back if he didn't think he could do something. I think he's always got the athleticism. But like you said, we'll have to wait and see 3 years of inactivity. I think David said himself, everything's going right in the gym, everything's going right. But he won't know himself what he's got until he actually comes out on Saturday night. And I do wish him well.
Okay. I'm going to ask you one last question, Enzo. I asked this to basically everyone that I speak to. Last week we had Lee Selby and Andrew Selby on the show. I asked them this as well. Who is your favourite British fighter, any weight, of all time?
Of all time? It's only one, Nigel Benn.
Really?
Yeah, Nigel Benn. I loved watching Nigel Benn. There's a man who wore his heart in his sleeve. I thought he was amazing to watch.
Literally everyone we speak to, I mean, most of the time we speak to guys from America on this show. We try to reach out to as many fighters in the States as we can. We get Prince Nassim Hamed a lot, sometimes Lennox Lewis. But that's the first time we've had Nigel Benn.
Nigel Benn, for me, if you look at the way I fight, I like to put everything on the line. Nigel Benn was the same, to me, it's been some great fighters, but I think for me the most exciting fighter was Nigel Benn.
Absolutely, fair point. The Dark Destroyer himself. Now, Enzo, thank you very much for giving us some time. This close to the new year. I hope you have a fantastic year this year. I hope you get to your 50th fight with a massive win, and I hope that you can reach yet another world title just before you call it a day.
Thank you very much, mate. Appreciate that.
No problem, Enzo. We'll speak to you again soon.
Ta-ra, buddy.
Okay, now it's time to conclude episode 15 of the Boxhard podcast. I've been your host, Joey Coastman. A big thank you, especially to everybody who's listened this far. If you've listened this far, then thank you very much for giving us your ears for the past 45 minutes or so. I think the show was today. Thank you very much for listening. Have a fantastic weekend, everybody. Please follow us. Please retweet. Please like. Please favourite. We're on Twitter. We're on SoundCloud. We're on iTunes. We're now on YouTube, of course, as well. Please look out for us doing a lot of big things. And we will be back next week with another buster of a show. A big thank you to my guest, my panel speaker, my main panel speaker, as always, Ayaz Sumra. And also a big shout out to Sophia Di Stefano, who's joined us for 2 shows in a row now. She'll be on a few more shows in the future. Also, a big shout out to Enzo Maccarinelli, one of our guests on today's show, the former WBO cruiserweight champion of the world. And a big shout out, of course, to the Australian living in Croatia, fighting in the O2 Arena on Saturday, Mr. Mark De Mori. Once again, thank you very much for listening this far, and we'll see you next week.